Ladies and gentlemen, it is the last hour of our Marathon Live show, and we've reached our final interview of the day. Can you believe it, man? This is what you've been waiting for. Give it up for the cast and creators of You're Not a Monster, ladies and gentlemen. Before we dive into the show, I just want to take this moment. That's part of the reason I get to do this job is because I like to meet people whose work has touched me or influenced me or plays a big part. Just to have that moment, like a fan moment, to be like, oh my God. This is going to sound very disturbing. Every night of my life for the last 10 years, you are the voice that puts me to sleep. Me and my wife are hardcore Frasier addicts. So we put it on a loop and go to sleep to it. And some people are like, that's insulting. No, that's when you love something so much that you know every word of it, it is comforting to go to sleep to, man. So like, sometimes we pause you and have sex, but generally speaking, we go to sleep and you're surrounding us. It's really, really nice.
I'm very flattered to know all those things.
Thank you for that. All right, Frank, take us into it, man. It sounds like a great idea. How did it happen, and how did it happen on here on IMDb?
Well, it happened because I thought, well, IMDb is the perfect place for a show about monsters with different issues because it ties to my love of horror films, but also sort of my fear of the horror films. And I was thinking, well, what makes the monsters sort of scared? And so the show itself is called You're Not a Monster, and it's about a therapist whose patients really are the horrifying monsters they think they are because they really are horrifying monsters. So he's got mummy patients. He has, there's a Frankenstein monster who's having issues because his arms were replaced by the arms of a Japanese cadaver and he's been accused of cultural appropriation. There's a werewolf that's struggling with his attraction to dogs, like different things like that. And so, you know, it was a fun time to sort of come to IMDb and play around with the different monsters. And throughout in each episode, there's probably weird, obscure references that only real movie or horror film fans will enjoy. And it was amazing to work with Kelsey, who is exactly. When my fiance and I, when we have sex, we keep Frasier playing. Yeah, we keep it going still.
Smart. Because he's sitting in the background going, "I'm listening."
Exactly. But it was just such a perfect sort of confluence of events and people who were interested and willing to do it. And Kelsey plays the main character is a guy, Max, who's voiced by Eric Stonestreet, who's just a human who's dealing with this sort of crazy thing that he's been dropped into. And Kelsey is his great-great-grandfather, who's a vampire, who's a retired therapist who forced him at pain of death to take over the practice. Right. And so it's sort of their sort of intergenerational conflict, stuff going through all of that stuff, and it's just been a real pleasure to get to work with everybody and get to work with IMDb and get to add another credit to my IMDb page. So.
And you can change your credits now because you know people in the inside. You can be like, take that one off.
I
do it all the time. I have them take. Cool. They took Jersey Girl off mine a long time ago. Never made it. So for you, how much research do you have to put into playing a therapist? You've never done that before.
No, I don't like to research roles really. As a rule, I don't do any kind of background checks. I just make it up.
Right.
And that's been what I've been doing as a therapist ever since. But the whole idea of playing a therapist, of course, 20 some odd years ago started, and that was, I just thought, well, the guy has to care and listen. So, of course, I'm listening. But in this case, Frank and I spoke over a sort of a video conference thing about 3 years ago, and I thought, yeah, that sounds like a fun idea. I didn't know what sort of form it was going to take, and then suddenly, about a year ago, year and a half, somebody said, we have some scripts, we've generated some ideas, and what do you think of this? And it turned into one day I'm sitting there with Eric Stonestreet in a recording booth, and we went at it.
And
so
you're no
it was great.
stranger to the animated voice. You've
I've done quite a few of those.
Sideshow
Bob, and there's a few others. Toy Story 2, and Stinky Pete, who apparently is now, a part of the Me Too movement. He's been discarded as a result of some silly thing we did years ago. Right. But. It's a great experience to play someone on an animated show because you actually just get to use your voice. And
you passed it down. We saw before we went, like your daughter was here.
Yeah, my daughter Spence is on Rick and Morty, and it's a very big show. And I was at a Comic-Con 3 years ago for Troll Hunters, which has done pretty well too, in a different age group. But it's just fun work.
It is. It's awesome. It's a really good time. You're the animator.
Yes.
And you look like 12, 14 years old,
We're
man.
gonna go with it.
I mean, that's fantastic. Like, you're so
Yeah.
young and in charge of him.
I mean, I get out of like 8th grade and I go and I draw things. Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
How neat.
Yeah, so I'm the animation art director, and they're actually my original characters. So seeing something that I was doodling one day and Kelsey Grammer's voice is coming out of it is a very surreal thing, and it's still surreal, and I watch it every day. So
Trust me, life is not like this normally. You think every job's gonna be like this? Unfortunately, it won't. How has it been, man? Like, I would imagine, like, I wish I could draw. That was the art form that I wish I could embrace. If I could draw, I wouldn't make those terrible movies and inflict them on others and stuff. What is it like when you can play God from beginning to end? You take a blank slate and you can just create anything you want, as expensive as you want, right on an image.
it's absolutely amazing. I have been drawing my entire life. My teachers would always yell at me, "Lily, stop drawing, stop drawing." And ever since 6th grade, I actually knew I wanted to go into animation. And I have not stopped, and apparently I'm in 9th or 10th grade now, so
Yes.
it's only been a few years.
Just ready to go to high school, and boy, you got a job and everything.
Yeah.
Your teachers got it wrong, which is very cool.
Yes,
That's
yes.
great.
The people who yelled at me to stop drawing, the joke's on them now.
Yes, living proof, kids. Never
Yeah.
listen to your teachers, right there.
But her drawing style is also just wonderful and delightful and makes these sort of horrific monsters seem like people you can actually care about. And it
Yeah.
definitely humanizes the inhuman. And so I think that's helpful so nothing's too gross. Because you're like, oh, it's adorable. It's a gross, bloody heart, but it's like, it's like a cute, it's got googly
But
eyes
it's
or
like,
something.
It's like a cute inside of a zombie. It's fine.
Right. It's not off-putting by any stretch of the imagination. Aparna, you are insanely funny on Twitter. I was telling you before we went.
thank
I've
you.
seen your work for a long time before we've actually met right here. What do you do in the show?
I play the receptionist in the therapist's office, who is also a sex demon / succubus, depending on which you prefer, named Nia, and she is secretly in love with Max the therapist, so it's that classic love story of sex demon therapist, sex demon receptionist.
Oh, another
in
one
love
of
with
those?
therapist. Yep. We just wanted to take our own stab at it.
How does one prepare to play a sex demon?
Thing that I related to her most is she's kind of delusional and neurotic, so I started with that and then wrapped in the sex demon part on top
Did
of
the sex
that.
thing later,
Yeah.
right?
That came later.
Yes.
What was the process to come into IMDb? They've not done scripted before. Like years ago, when we started doing this stuff, I was like, you guys have an audience of 250 million to hit the channel. Like, this program is cool, but you should make shows, man, and stuff like that. I don't think they listened to me, but they came and heard an idea of years later and said, maybe we should move into this arena.
I don't actually know how it all happened. I mean, are you cognizant of that? Or
Yeah,
I mean,
don't bring
do
it
you
up.
actually
Don't make them
know?
second guess this.
Yeah, they're like, wait a second.
They've
But,
agreed.
I'm thrilled they decided to do it. I'd love to be part of something that's new, so something that's just happening for the first time. This is great, and like you said, I mean, obviously we're prescient, but it's a big audience, and I think attention span theater, sort of 4-minute episodes is 4.5. Are we now 5?
I think 4.5.
4.5 or so.
Occasionally.
4.5 to 5 minutes.
Wait a
But,
second. We've been talking about a 4.5-minute
Yes,
cartoon?
you have.
What a ripoff, man! Where's the other 26 minutes?
10
Well,
episodes.
we'll
10
talk
episodes.
to him about that. And, maybe we'll expand it a little later. But
So you got 10
I mean, it
episodes of 4
seems to be
minutes?
what people
Yeah,
can
4.5,
swallow
5.
these days. So we're actually okay.
Absolutely right, man. That's the perfect content. Perfect size. What can we expect over the course of the full season?
Well, so each episode does focus on a specific monster and sort of what their issues are. And so with Aparna's, who plays the character Nia, she's sitting there and decides to sit in and talk about this guy that she likes, and the therapist is completely oblivious to it. It's bookended with some stuff with Freddy Krueger, or I think we were just saying Frederick.
Myers.
Yeah. Oh right. Oh, that one. But we're sort of, so each episode sort of does deal with sort of that as the B story, and then there are the larger things of the main character, his relationship with his great-great-grandfather,
Yes.
who is a very disturbing Victorian vampire who's a little bit stuck in the 19th century Victorian ways a bit. I don't want to give stuff away because there's a big twist in episode 10.
Giant twist.
Gigantic twist that sets up
45.
Yes.
that sets up the feature-length trilogy of films that we we have planned around it. But we have a lot of other stuff with the different characters. There's Ellie Kemper is a human therapist who had been previously dating Max, the main character, and she thinks everything's just all in his head and thinks he's just crazy, which very well could be a possibility. So we do have different characters and different things sort of going on, and we want to bring back some of those different characters and do various stuff with that. But it's great because we can do whatever we want because of Lily's animation and the drawing and the wonderful voice talent. Like
Right.
Aparna is really great and so funny on BoJack, and like Kelsey, obviously, with just your voice. Just here, we're going to animate
Just
your
here.
voice here.
Just here we'll do it.
Just doing stuff. But we're very excited to do as much as people want to see.
One of my favorite bits is that the Invisible Man is always pissed off that people talk about him when he's in the room. and he says, "I'm right here." You know, so I just like
How
that.
many of you have ever been to Comic-Con before? You must have been with
But
the
really,
X-Men
really
movies, or
rarely. No, I was offered years ago to come after I did Hank McCoy.
Yeah.
And I turned it down.
You were like, I don't want to go down there.
I really regret it, but I mean, nonetheless, it's dressing up in blue is, it's only really one place to do that.
Yes.
And it's Comic-Con, but I didn't know that.
Right.
But no, I have been a couple times, sort of on the outskirts of it. I was in the New York one a few years back.
Great show.
But this is my first real experience with it, and I'm very impressed.
It's beautiful, right?
It's
gorgeous,
amazing.
man.
And San
Diverse,
Diego's
and it's
breathtaking.
beautiful in San Diego. What about you, Frank?
No, I've never been before, but it's great, and I love crowds. This is a lot of people. It is a lot. We actually stupidly decided to walk here from the hotel and almost didn't make it on time because you cannot walk through. But it's great. It's amazing.
What about you two?
So this is my third year at Comic-Con.
Nice.
I have never done this at Comic-Con.
Right.
But I absolutely love Comic-Con, and yes, there's a lot of crowds, but they're all wonderful people, and I love yelling at people that I really like their cosplay because it just lights their face up, and it's my favorite thing to yell at people in costumes, apparently.
What's going to be amazing is we come back next year and you see your characters on people's shirts and
I
stuff.
actually have a bet going with Frank that if we get a full 30-minute TV show, I will cosplay as one of the characters.
Very
so,
nice. Partner, you ever been here before?
I've never been. First time.
What's your take on it?
I feel
What will
like-
you be tweeting, shall I
feel
say?
like, well, as someone who enjoys people watching, I feel like it's the most elite level of people watching. Just very high quality. Every glance is rewarded.
It's true. It's in every direction. Throw a rock. There's something
Yeah.
wonderful to look at and analyze as well.
Yeah.
And analyze, you guys shall. Do you see that segue?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. The show is called You're Not a Monster. Give it up for them, ladies and gentlemen.